Jazon Rozenblat, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Jazon, what do you do today? How do you make a living?
Today, I'm making a living because it might change tomorrow. Today, I have my own business called Sympathia Growth. It's a consulting practice where I offer fractional leadership services, primarily in sales, consulting services, advisory services, primarily for early stage startups.
Okay, so your ideal customer will be early stage startups that want to scale, don't really know how to go about it. You help them structure their sales departments.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a couple different scenarios, a couple different types of clients I work with. Most often it's founder-led sales, and they're a technical founder, or they've got product background or marketing background. They don't have a sales background.
Right.
So they've never actually built a sales team or built a sales motion. But they're obviously incredibly passionate about their product. So founder-led sales, and it's time for them to evolve out of that stage. So that's a very common situation. Sometimes they have a sales team. Sometimes they have a couple of account executives. Sometimes they even have a sales leader, and they're just stuck. And coming in and diagnosing what's wrong, what's broken, what needs to improve, and then implementing changes and staying the course with them until it gets back into a good track, and then swooping in and swooping out.
Nice. How long does the typical engagement last?
It's about anywhere from 3 to 6 months, but sometimes you stay on for a little bit longer in sort of an advisory capacity, where the scope scales down, where you're just doing calls, weekly calls. But for example, I just started one that's going to be 6 months. It's going to be very involved with the team, and spending a lot of time with the founders, and really figuring a lot of stuff out to get them in a good place. And then I would imagine that it's sort of like it'll start to tail off after a couple months.
Very good.
Yeah.
Jazon, how did you get there? Were you always in sales?
Yeah. So I went to college and studied marketing, and I thought I wanted to get into marketing. And I had an internship in college, an unpaid internship, and then I graduated and asked them for a job, and they said, "We can't afford you." And I needed a job. So I ended up working for the rental car company Enterprise right out of college. A lot of my friends went there, and I was like, I need a job. Let's do this. And I ended up learning a lot about sales there, a lot about leadership, a lot about management, a lot about customer service. Um, and even prior to that, in college, I was a waiter, and it was sales and customer service, and whether people realize it or not. I mean, you're selling yourself, you're selling the special, the bottle of wine, whatever it is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's incredible training, because you never know who's going to sit at your table, and you still have to make the best out of that situation, even if they're having a bad day, even if they're not nice, even if whatever. So yeah, you could say I've been in sales for a while. And I'm what people would call an extroverted introvert.
Okay.
Um, I don't really want to go into a crowded room and start mingling with people I don't know. But if I know you, if we have something in common, I could talk forever. Much like our first conversation, it was our first time meeting, and we were like old friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been in sales for over 20 years now, and sales leadership for 20 years as well at this point.
I love it. You know what? When you talked about being a waiter and everything that goes into it and how you're selling, it's funny because I tend to go back to the places where I had a very good kind of experience with the waiter. If I don't have a good
Yeah,
experience with the waiter, I don't come back.
I
I,
completely agree.
And it's amazing how many places don't get that, right? Maybe they have great
I know.
food, maybe they got whatever, but they don't treat their waiters well, or something is going on that then you feed it with the way that the waiter is treating you. And
Oh yeah.
it's an important, I mean, I remember going back and back and back when I was working, right? And I will go back and I knew the waiter by name and I will try to see it wherever he was. I wanted the same waiter every time.
Without a doubt, yeah. Well, it's why you see, at like higher end restaurants, especially like steakhouses, at least here in the States, like steakhouses, a lot of the waiters have been working there for 10, 15, 20 years. And they have regulars and they make a lot of money. I mean, they're not making, minimum wage. They're not just scraping by on like tips. They're doing well. They've put kids through college through a waiter job. So yeah, the level of service that you get is makes, because it's the food and then there's the meal. Like there's the experience. Like
Yes.
those are two different things. And the experience, the meal is the whole experience. And there are parallels to that in sales. I mean, I have uh, as someone who's on the both on the buying side and selling side, one thing that's been super helpful for me is understanding what the buying process is like. It's helped me in my sales career, my sales leadership career, and coaching, because I understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of a good and a bad sales process. And a bad sales process will ruin everything, even if the product is the best out of the consideration set. And I've said no to products that are better, as crazy as this sounds, because the experience was terrible. And if this was the first impression that you have with that company, and you're about to sign an annual or multi-year agreement, and this is an important piece of like your tech stack or your sales stack, then that's a bad
Yeah.
that's the bad first impression is just going to kill the entire relationship. So yeah, it's a big deal, and that's why it's funny. My old boss Chris, he worked at Dell for several years, and when he first started, I was the head of sales, and he came in as the president of the division. We were working for a company called Green Sky, the fintech company, and he was asking about my hiring profile, because I was hiring a lot of account executives and BDRs at the time, and I've always liked people that played sports, team sports especially. Yeah, you play well in a team, you're coachable, you're competitive, all those reasons. And I already sort of gave away the answer a little bit because we've been talking about it, but he asked me, "Do you know what the number one trait for the most successful salespeople at Dell, which was a huge company, thousands of salespeople all across the world?" And I thought it was sports, and he said, "No, it's a restaurant experience, serving experience." And I've since then, I have changed my hiring profile. This was in 2015 or 16. So for 7 years now, I favor employees that have restaurant experience as like one of the top traits.
Wow.
Specifically front of the house, like you're dealing with people,
Yeah.
right? Because again, like you get on a sales call, you have no idea who you're going to come across. It could be somebody that like will not talk, somebody who's very rude, somebody who talks too much. You have no idea, right? And it's the same thing with being a waiter. Like you have no idea, no idea what's going to happen when that person walks in, and you've got to make the best of it. So
This is amazing. I'm learning a lot already. So my next question was going to be, what skills do you think are more important to be good at sales, right? And it seems like empathy and being able to read human beings very fast and to
yeah,
adjust very fast seems to be one of them, right? Because I've never been a waiter in my life. I'm going to ask you as well, what are the things that you learn that come with that trade, right, at that experience? But you seem to be indicating that it's a lot about you go to the table, you look at the people, and you read them like this, right? And then
sure. very
you
fast.
know how to treat them, and you start, realizing that there are different types of people that like different things. Is a little bit of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you a perfect example. So, uh, I lived in New York after I graduated college, and um, as a result of that, and also, and we'll probably get to this at some point, but my parents lived in New York, but also Argentina, and like there was always just like a lot of profanity everywhere I've always been. People like just cursing a lot because everyone's very enthusiastic and energetic. But especially living in New York City, there's just a lot of profanity. And um, whenever I would be on a sales call, I would never be the first person to drop a curse word ever. But if I hear them start to drop profanity, I might sneak something in, like nothing crazy, but like a little soft one every here and there, so that we're relating. So I think that the skill of the term, like the icebreaker, like when you get into a call and you're asking, you just bring something up. You don't ask about the weather or anything like that. Don't ask, but like something almost like a joke or something, just to like test the mood of the room is so important, because otherwise you don't know how to steer the rest of the conversation.
Do you
So
have an
using a little
example
bit of
of
humor,
that to test the room? I love it, man. To test the mood of the room.
man, it's gotten like with Zoom and COVID and everything, it got a lot easier because inevitably you're always dealing with something like a personal situation, like, oh, I've got my new dog just pooped on the carpet or something, like anything like that. And when you get on the call, you're like, sorry, I was a minute late. My new puppy had an accident. And if they're like, oh, what kind of puppy do you have? Or, oh no, what happened? You're like, okay, this is going to be a good conversation. But if they're like, okay, you're like, all right, this is gonna suck. And but you just change your demeanor, you change your mood to match them. And not everybody is going to be the extroverted introvert, or extroverted even a little bit. Some people might just be very guarded and keep all their emotions close to the vest and not really say anything. So I think the key is knowing who you're selling to. The better you know your persona, the better you know who you're selling to, their temperament, their um, the way that they generally carry themselves. I think the more successful you'll be as a salesperson.
Amazing. Um, you talked a little bit about your parents, and that Argentina heritage that you have. Were your
Yeah.
parents or any close relative in sales?
So my father was an attorney, and then in the music industry for a long time. So he was in sales. He was an executive in the Latin music industry. So yeah, he was very much in sales, even though um, later in his career, the further he moved up, he wasn't like actually like technically in sales or a salesperson, but earlier in his career working at Sony and CBS Records, he was definitely in sales.
Very nice. And
Yeah.
did you have some fun experiences growing up because of that?
Yeah, so I didn't share this one with you when we originally met, but so this is kind of cool actually. I love to tell this story. So my father, when he really started in his music career, when it started to take off, um, he was involved with launching Gloria Stefan and the Miami Sound Machine. This is in the 80s. Like this is like right when they started to get super, super, super popular. He was responsible for launching their career. Um, and I met Gloria and Emilio Estefan a million times. My father is super close with them, been to their house a bunch of times. But my first black eye that I ever got was their son, who's older than me, and he's probably a father, and I haven't spoken to him in years. But he was at my house, and he threw a toy truck at my face and hit me in the eye. So one of my claims to fame is that Gloria Stefan's son gave me my first black eye. But I also have these really cool pictures. Growing up, I loved baseball, and I was a New York Yankees fan. And we went to a Gloria Stefan concert. I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. I can't even remember. We went to a Gloria Stefan concert that was after a game, after a New York Yankees game at Yankee Stadium, and all the Yankees players stayed to watch the concert because she was one of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah.
And I got to go to the locker rooms and see the locker rooms. I got autographs from all the Yankees. Was on the field at Yankee Stadium, and I have all these really cool pictures. So yeah, I've met a lot of really awesome celebrities. But what I was telling you, and your face lit up last time we were talking. When I was in my teens, when my dad moved, he was the general manager for Huella Latina. Huella is Warner Electra Atlantic, so big record label, but the Latin division. And his label represented all these huge stars that I knew nothing about. I hated Latin music. I was very much into. We shared a lot of similarities, like very much into like Rage Against the Machine, Metallica. I was into like metal and hip hop, and like I hated Spanish music, hated it. And but meanwhile, I'm like going to all these concerts. I'm going to Puerto Rico and meeting like biggest celebrities, Spanish or Latin celebrities in the world, and I couldn't care less. Like I was just sitting there. I'm like, this sucks. Get me out of here. But hanging with like mega stars, you know, being in sold out arenas where there are people in the crowd going crazy, fainting because they're so excited. And meanwhile, I'm backstage, like I would rather be anywhere else in the world than here. So, yeah, it was an interesting experience. Looking back at that.
And we talked a little bit about about this last time. So probably the fact that you didn't like this music so much made you act super natural, right? And I mean, you were
Yeah,
keeping your shit together, right? And so
yeah,
it's basically these guys loved you because of that. You were not like super on top of them, like, oh my God, you're the best in the world. Blah.
yeah,
You were normal. You were
yeah.
like, yeah, dude, do you want to play,
I,
Nintendo, whatever, right? I mean,
I think it would have been a lot more. I think it would have been a lot weirder for them if I was constantly like just staring, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm. Because we would go to lunch, we would go to breakfast, we'd have dinner, we would be at their house, and I'm talking about like mega stars that again, like we're selling out arenas, selling millions of records, across the world, and it didn't phase me at all. So yeah, they always liked me. They always liked me being around, even though I was like an awkward little teenager. And maybe they liked me because my dad was the GM of the record label. But I don't know, who cares? But I never was like starstruck by any of them. But looking back on it now, I think it's pretty cool. I also think that with social media now, had it been around then, I would have been able to like to see with evidence like, oh my God, this person has probably at the time would have had millions, tens of millions of followers, and I would have been more starstruck. But I wasn't able to quantify like how it didn't mean anything to me at the time, like
yeah.
probably because I didn't like the music. Um,
Do
but I
you,
like it now and I play it for my kids. So
and you can tell them, hey, I met all of these guys.
and they don't care either. They don't care either because they're looking at how many followers they have now, and it's been a while, so I don't even know how many followers that some of these people have anymore. So,
Right.
yeah, unless it's
You,
Taylor Swift or
yeah.
they don't care.
Do you think keeping it cool, it's another important skill or trait for salespeople, and not going like, oh no, I have to talk to the CEO, and all of a sudden I'm trembling, and I
Yeah,
can't, my presentation is not working, and I get all of sweatier. I mean, do you think that's one trait that is important?
yeah, and I think that not only do I think it's important, I also think it's important to. I'm very big on the topic of stoicism, and also just like learning from your mistakes. and extracting valuable lessons from, bad situations. I think that those are the types of situations that maybe you have to go through a bad experience once, hopefully just once, to to realize or to appreciate like what to do better next time. Um, some people just get it right out of the gate, but I mean, I remember I was in my early 20s in New York City, and we were selling an enterprise product, and I had no business being in the room, but I set an appointment with one of my senior enterprise reps with like Morgan Stanley, um, and like we went and pitched, like we pitched Fidelity. We were pitching like all these big banks, and I was getting meetings. I was working at a company called The Ladders, and we were selling recruitment, like job postings for
Right.
100K plus jobs. And I remember my enterprise rep Mary, she took me with her on some of these appointments, and I was sitting in this room, at this like major bank, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I didn't talk, like I didn't know what to do. And then like I would get feedback afterwards, like you could be yourself, like be more
Yeah.
normal. I also remember I had co-founded a startup in New York City, and we had the opportunity to pitch, do like a presentation for a New York Tech meetup, and it was in front of several hundred people at Miller Union in New York City, and um, my co-founder was supposed to present. He had strep throat, and at the last second was like, "I need you to present," and I wasn't prepared at all to present, and I wasn't feeling well either. I probably got sick from him because we were sitting in like a tiny little cube like this because we couldn't afford anything else. And I got up, and I still remember it very vividly. Like everything is dark. There are hundreds of people, including like VCs in the crowd, all these startup founders in New York City. And I'm like in my 20s, and the lights are shining bright in my face, and the presentation stopped working.
No.
And like that is like and that is like the worst thing that could happen. And you just dust it off, you brush it off, and you just kind of keep going. But unless you've been there and done that, then you're not going to be prepared for how to do that. So I'm glad that it happened, and I'm glad I was able to handle it well, because otherwise that would have happened at another point in my career, and it would have been the first time I was doing it then. So I'm glad I got out of the way. But yeah, keeping your cool, being yourself, um, you know, is very critical. But it still goes back to what I was saying before. It's like mirroring and getting a good sense of who it is that you're speaking with, because like not all CEOs are the same exact personality, right? Like some CEOs really are like, I'm the CEO, you're beneath me, and I'm going to treat you like that. And
Yep.
other CEOs are the other end of the spectrum. They're super cool. Like they don't act like that at all. So it's a matter of gauging and understanding who it is that you're talking to, so you can adjust your temperament, your attitude, um, accordingly.
Do you think what skills do you think you also picked up by being, a child in a multicultural house, right? And a first generation American, and everything that it's a nice blend, right? You had a very nice mix going on, the city and everything, and the influences.
Yeah. So my dad was going to law school in University of Miami at night while working a full time job at CBS Records. Uh, and he was working in Miami, and we lived in Broward, so like it was 45-minute drive each way, and then going to law school at night. And I was the oldest of three, but while he was doing this, it was me and my sister also. So I saw that work ethic that he had, and I saw how much he valued education, and I saw how much how much effort he put into being able to support the family. Um, and like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because part of it is like he wasn't around as much. It ended up my parents got divorced. It ended up like he was traveling a lot, whatever. We don't have to get into the specifics. This isn't a therapy session. But the effort and dedication to providing to wanting to be able to provide for the family was that was like burned into my brain, and is a big reason why I work so hard. So yeah, I mean that culture, being being the child of immigrant parents, being first generation, there was and the firstborn and first generation, it was a lot of pressure that I felt that I inflicted on myself, to be able to be successful because I'm starting that legacy. So, and also knowing like what my parents went through, especially my dad. I mean, my dad didn't come from money. He moved to New York City when he was a teenager from Argentina. He was born and raised in Argentina, and then moved to New York City. And he would tell me like he would get made fun of all the time because he didn't speak English, and he would get beat up all the time. And he still became super successful, and that was inspirational for me, to be able to see that, not everybody is going to be super fortunate. Everybody's dealt a different situation, but it's up to you to be able to figure out how to get out of that situation and achieve whatever it is you want to achieve.
I love it. It's a very powerful story. Very inspirational, and I can clearly see how your father was a role model. And also the values, right? The values of a family, taking care of a family, and everything that goes with it, and what we call success or not, right? I mean,
Yeah,
and to me, there's a lot of success in just a simple thing that is not simple at all, and you know that because we are raising families, but raising a family, taking care of your children, and building a legacy for them. When you were talking about being successful, and I was, thinking out, but what does that mean? I think it's there.
yeah,
Would you agree?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, my kids see both my wife and me. By the way, my wife works way harder and is way more successful than me. She's really the brains of the operation. But my kids see that. They see it firsthand. And when they get home from school or from camp, and we both work from home right now, which is good. Like I appreciate that for so many reasons. But when they get home, like yesterday, they came home from camp. I was still working in my office, and they both came in my room, and I said, "Okay, guys, we have to do some reading today." My son is reading Harry Potter. My daughter's reading Magic Tree House. I don't even know what she's reading, but I was like, "All right, I need you to read a little bit. You can hang out in my office." And they both hung out while I was working. So, and they do that with my wife all the time. For them to physically see how hard we work, is I think is creating a really good, just trying to be a good role model as much as possible, because I heard this saying the other day. I can't remember where I read or I heard it. I think it was on a podcast, but it stuck with me. And it's, we're not raising kids, we're raising adults. Like we're raising them to be good citizens. We're raising them to be eventually like people that other people like and want to be around. And that's my goal, is to raise successful, happy, obviously healthy, but you can't control that as much. But successful, happy, confident, intelligent, curious children. That's all that, like, that's my focus.
I love it. With that said, what do you think when you think about their future? Right, I have two children, 5 and 7 year old, and it amazes me to think about what they are going to be doing when they are 20 something. Probably it doesn't yet exist, right? So that's a challenge, right? So I know that, it's impossible to know the answer, but when you think about the future of work, what do you think is coming, right? If with your wildest ideas.
Well, they're at the age now. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they're at the age now. My son is convinced he's going to be a professional soccer player, so that's not going away. And I'm not going to tell him he's not. So, like, sure, be a soccer player. I'll go and take me sure, let me travel wherever you're going. Take care of me when I'm older. And my daughter is convinced that she's going to be either a famous dancer or a famous gymnast or a famous actress. So right now, that's all they care about. That's all they're focused on. To think that and that's the way I was when I was young too. I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player. That didn't happen. But I think that to think what they're going to be doing in their 20s is very difficult for me to wrap my head around. People just are constantly changing, and especially at this age, they're just constantly being molded and adapting to different things that's going on, different things that are going on in their environment. So my main thing is to keep them in an environment that continues to foster growth, education, being good people, and it's almost like you're an archer and they're the arrow, and you just want to like point them in the right direction. Like you can't
Yeah.
control where they go, but you just want to like point them in the right direction. So I have no idea what they're going to be when they're older or what the future of work would look like. Um, maybe my daughter ends up being like a gang leader and is in prison. She might be, based on her temper sometimes. So yeah, you never know. Um, but I'm just doing my part every moment I have with them to raise good, great adults one day.
Very, very nice. Any new technology that excites you today that you look at it and you go, like, I can use this, I can leverage this?
Yeah, I've been very bullish on AI for a while now. Um, and I my last company where I was VP sales, call we started like dipping our toe in AI specifically for like calls and call transcription. But even before that, um, before AI really exploded, I was always fascinated by what it could do for like sentiment analysis. Like I love call coaching. Um, as a sales leader, it's probably my favorite part of leadership, is being able to coach, like the coaching element specifically, and the insights that you're able to get from a lot of the AI tools on call recordings and demo recordings. That to me was a massive tipping point in the sales profession. Because if you think of, there are so many parallels and analogies to sales and sports. And if you think of coaches in sports, you're practice like the best managers, the best coaches practice very, very with a lot of intent. It's deliberate practice. We lost last game. This is where we got exposed. This next opponent is very good at doing this. We're going to practice how to prevent this so that we can win. It's strategy. It's chess. And when you think of what they're doing, is not only are they practicing, but then they're looking at video, they're looking at film, they're looking at, okay, do you see what happened here? Let's stop this video and like let's look at what happened here. How can we do better here? And then they go and practice it. And to be able to bring that mentality to the sales profession was for me when like it started. This was probably about, I remember I was running sales for a company called Green Sky, and I bought Gong when Gong was first coming out. Their CEO reached out to me, and like this is when they were still small. He reached out to me directly. Now they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and he's like, "Hey, I'd love to tell you all about our product. Do you have time?" I was like, "Sure." Meanwhile, now he's like one of the top CEOs in Silicon Valley. But when I first started to like understand what you could do with AI and call transcription and draw that parallel to sports, I was like, this is it. This is the game changer. So to be able to pull a sales rep into a meeting, and listen to their call and analyze the parts of the call, and then role play how to do it better, and then see how they did it on the next call and constantly improve. To me, I think that is just, if you're not doing that now, in your company, if you're not coaching your sales team, you are making a massive mistake. Because it is there's so much opportunity there right now, just to improve the way things are going with your individual reps and then overall as an organization. And then like AI like is really starting to seep into every other tool in the sales stack. I think there are a lot of really cool tools out there. Like one of my favorites is Lavender. They do a lot with like email and writing better emails, because email is still just a huge part of outreach for sales teams. So being able to craft good emails, great emails rather, and leveraging AI technology for that is really cool. And yeah, I mean, we're really, I think, still sort of at the early stages of what AI can do for good. Hopefully, we get some controls on it so that it doesn't run rampant and become a problem. But right now, I'm really excited about a lot of the stuff that's happening in the sales and tech stack, being powered by those engines.
I love it. And if you are listening, you might want to replay some of what we just discussed. A lot of value packed in just a few minutes, right? So hear that out, right? You're leading a sales team. You could be doing coaching in an amazing way. If you're not doing it, you are losing time and money. And you will not have the same impact that you could have. You could have an ongoing feedback loop that can let you learn every single day, right? So many things going on. That was an amazing answer, Jazon. I appreciate it. I have one last question for you. When you are not working, what do you do?
I play soccer with my son until my knee starts to hurt. And then I also play ice hockey.
Oh,
so yeah. I played soccer my entire life, but when I was I want to say 12 years old in Florida, I had a lot of friends that moved to Florida from the north, that they all played ice hockey. They all played hockey, and I started to get into it, and so I've been playing, since I was 12 years old. So I play a couple of nights a week, and yeah, that's that. And then also building my business, building my really trying to work on more content to get it's a creative output primarily, but also if I could build a brand a little bit, but very focused on my clients right now also. And then where we live in Georgia, where we live near Atlanta, and it's you have beautiful mountains like only like 45 minutes away, so we like to go out hiking, be out in the woods, be out in nature as much as possible, and occasionally I try this,
yes.
but I'm not good at it.
A
So I'm
guitar
still
for
learning.
the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not today, not today, man. Maybe another time, but yeah. So yeah, I just try to keep myself busy. I also read a lot of books. Also a lot on Audible. At any point, I used to think I was crazy. Then I heard Naval Ravikant, who's like one of the most brilliant people out there. I heard him say this on Tim Ferriss's podcast that he does this also. At any point, I am in the middle of like 6 different books, because my mindset like changes a lot. So I might be interested in reading this fiction. I might be interested in reading this nonfiction. I might be interested in reading this biography. And I bounce around a lot. So unless it's like one of those crazy captivating books, I very rarely read it all the way through. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's the way I've been lately. And this is the two of the books I'm reading right now that are just awesome, that I highly recommend. This, I don't know if you can see this. It's the Rick Rubin book, The Creative Act, The Way of Being. Rick
I'm
Rubin is
trying
one of the
to
most...
get that one. I'm trying. Rick Rubin, man, what a producer, and he worked with so many artists, and I heard a podcast by Ezra Klein, and he has his own podcast, Broken Record, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry for stopping you, but you just blew my.
No, this book is awesome. This book is so good. He's such a genius. He's such an interesting guy. I listen to everything I can by him, especially when he is a guest on somebody else's podcast. It's always great. And then this is another book. Like I told you I'm very big into Stoicism. It's really helped me in my life a lot. And then there's this book called Lessons from an American Stoic.
Okay.
It's about it's about Emerson and just Stoicism normally is traced back to Roman and Greek times, and this is the first exploration into or an exploration into what Ralph Waldo Emerson, who's known as the first American Stoic. So not as far back in time, just a couple hundred years. But yeah, Stoicism is a fascinating topic to me that I'm still learning so much about.
I absolutely love it. Jazon, it's been a pleasure. I could talk ages with you, so I hope we can do this again sometime. And thank you for
Yeah,
being here.
of course, man. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have you when I launch my podcast. I'm gonna have you as one of my guests, man, and we'll
Please do.
continue the conversation. Yeah.